After a host of postponements in round 5, only 3 games took place, seeing Wrexham go to the top of the table. We now head into round 6 when every team will be playing with a TV game on Monday evening. So if you do want to watch that, make sure you have that Sky Sports package. We're going to be looking into every single fixture. The timestamps will be down in the comments and the description as usual. So make sure, if you only want to look at certain games, make sure you go and check that out. But we're going to be taking a look into League One, how important this weekend could be for a host of different teams. But before we do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content, which is going to be heading your way across the course of this season. Also, comment down below your predictions for this weekend. How do you think your team's going to get on? Do you think Wrexham are going to be at the top of the table come at the end of the weekend? Let me know your thoughts down below. We start off at the One Call Stadium where Mansfield Town host Cambridge United. It's a fixture which is going to be really interesting. Now, if we look at the results of both teams, they've certainly not been in the bestest of form. Mansfield Town's 1-1 draw to Stockport is certainly a good result when you look at where Stockport are sitting right now. Cambridge's 3-3 draw with Bromley, not necessarily a result you want to pick up. Obviously, you do have the 4-1 defeat for Mansfield to Lincoln City, 2-0 to Rotherham, 3-3 to Burton Albion and 1-1 with Bolton Wanderers. You've also, for Cambridge, got 3 defeats in there, 2-0 to Bristol Rovers, 1-0 to Crawley Town, 2-1 to QPR in the Cup, and the 4-4 with Blackpool, which was a very personality-driven game in my opinion. It showed a lot of character for Cambridge to come back. I think they were 4-1 down at one point, if I remember rightly. So it's going to be very interesting looking into this one. Obviously, there's a lot that can go on this weekend. Mansfield Town will be hoping that they can find some form to help solidify their place in the division. Obviously, it is only round 6. A lot of teams still have 42 games to go. Obviously, a lot, 41 heading into this weekend. But Mansfield and Cambridge will be looking to find a way to win their games. We look now into Northampton versus Wycombe Wanderers, being hosted by Northampton at Sixfield Stadium. Both of these teams come in off the back of decent runs, let's say. Now, I know EFL trophy games have been played. I'm not sure by which teams. So when we're going through these fixtures, do caveat that into your mind. But you look at Wycombe Wanderers, 2 wins and a draw in their last 3. Northampton Town, a win and 2 draws. Obviously 2-2 with Barnsley, 0-0 with Burton Albion, 2-1 versus Exeter. You obviously go back a few weeks and Wycombe Wanderers did beat Northampton Town, which is quite interesting. Northampton also lost to Bristol Rovers. You look at Wycombe Wanderers, there's the 3-2 defeat to Birmingham City, a 1-0 defeat to Wimbledon, a 2-0 win over Rotherham, a 1-0 win over Swansea, and that 2-2 draw with Blackpool. It's going to be very interesting looking into this one. I think Northampton and Wycombe are going to be battling for sort of the same area of the table come the end of the season. I think they're both going to be in that sort of mid-table position. Whether they're both going to be upper mid-table or lower mid-table is obviously still yet to be seen. I don't quite think Northampton have had the start they desired, but I think they will quietly go about their business and find themselves in a really good position. Wycombe Wanderers too are going to be doing a similar sort of thing, but their previous 3 results will help push them in the right direction. Now, during the international break, we found some really interesting news out. Blackpool appointed Steve Bruce as their new manager. Obviously, Steve Bruce's previous managerial role was, I believe, with Newcastle, and it didn't quite end in the way which many Newcastle fans or Steve Bruce fans or Steve Bruce himself probably wanted it to, but he heads into this one with the ability to turn it around for Blackpool. Obviously, they've not been in the best of form, and obviously Richard Keogh took over for a few games, and it's going to be really interesting to see what Steve Bruce can do to help this team and sort of push them up the division. Obviously, last season, they just missed out on playoffs, and I think it was because they had a bad away record. Could be home record, but one of the two, and they ultimately missed out on playoffs with a really good squad in my opinion, and probably one of the best players in the division in Karamoko Dembele. It's now up to Steve Bruce to get a tune out of this Blackpool squad. It's going to be really interesting to see what he can do. Now, talking about Exeter City, and if we do look at the previous 5, it's 2 losses for Exeter to Peterborough and Northampton, but it's 2 wins in their previous 2 games versus Bolton Wanderers and Swindon Town. It's going to be very interesting to see how Exeter City come out, because last season at points they were really, really good, but this season it's going to be interesting to see if this is their run of being good now, which ultimately keeps them safe in the division. Now, you look at Blackpool's previous form, it's 2 draws, 2 wins, and obviously that 3-0 loss to Stockport County. It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Bolton Wanderers certainly haven't had a start which they desired, and they face Huddersfield Town at the Tough Sheet Community Stadium. Now, you look at these results and there's 2 wins, a draw and 2 losses in there, and for me, the big problem is Bolton Wanderers are losing league games, and I think they've only won 1 league game, if I've got that correct. We'll just take a look at the league table to confirm. You look at Bolton Wanderers, 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss. You look at Huddersfield, 3 wins and 1 loss. Now, we'll continue to preview and look at the fixtures, but Huddersfield, as you can see there, have lost 3 on the spin to Walsall, Doncaster Rovers and Rotherham United, both Walsall and Doncaster in the division below. But Bolton Wanderers have lost to Charlton and Exeter recently. The 3-2 win over Barrow is something which they'll hope to build on and move forward from, but obviously missing the week for international duty. It's going to be very interesting to see how this one goes. I think Huddersfield will take all 3 points, but you can let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Heading into round 6 for Bristol Rovers, they host Wigan Athletic at the Memorial Stadium, and I think there's big conversations around Bristol Rovers for me, because I think at points last season they had really good spells during games. I think the big problem was they just couldn't turn them spells into massively positive results. And then you obviously look towards the back end of the season and they were on the beach for about 3 or 4 weeks, in my opinion, where they were safe in the division. They couldn't get playoffs, they couldn't get relegated, they couldn't really move much in position. And I think ultimately, when you look at the form they've started the season with, I think that shows. Obviously, the 0-0 draw to Rotherham United was a really good one. They've lost 2-0 to Stockport, 2-0 win over Cambridge, and a 2-1 loss to Barnsley with that 3-3 Spurs Academy result in there as well. I think Wigan, on the other hand, also haven't had the start which I anticipated or expected. They've lost 3 of the last 5, picking up 1 win versus Crawley and picking up a point versus Barnsley. It's going to be interesting to see how these 2 teams develop across the course of the season. It's not quite gone to plan for either of them so far. I think Wigan will certainly pick it up, but obviously they have lost a big talent in Charlie Hughes this summer, which is going to be a massive loss for them. It's going to be interesting to see how these 2 teams shake out come the end of the season. Crawley Town and Stockport were both promoted last season. Crawley Town started off brilliantly. Stockport United are doing even better. Now, Stockport County, my apologies. Now, if we look at the recent form, you can see exactly what I mean. I don't think Stockport have lost a game in the division yet. I don't think they've even drew a game. If we just click on the league table, my apologies, they drew that game versus Mansfield in the league. You obviously look at Crawley's recent results. They've lost their last 3 without scoring as well, which is very disappointing. They haven't won in 4, and that win was against Cambridge United. I think Crawley have finally found their level, really. Obviously, they started really, really well. I think they had back-to-back wins, if I remember rightly, but just not quite hit that same stride since then. Stockport sitting in that 2nd position after not playing this weekend due to internationals. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops for them across the course of the season. They've done excellently so far. I have to give them their plaudits. They've made some really good signings in the summer, and they've done a really good job to start this season off. It's going to be really interesting to see how this game goes. I can only see it going one way, if I'm completely honest, and it'll probably be a Louis Barry goal in some respect, whether it be a screamer or a tap-in, and I'm sure Stockport County will come away with 3 points. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for when all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One videos head your way. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments on the games so far. Let me know who you think is going to come out on top this season for the division. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you in the next part of this video. Now, this is going to be an interesting one for Peterborough and Lincoln. I think Peterborough have been sort of a little bit hit and miss so far this season, and obviously they're still finding their rhythm in an attacking sense. Obviously losing some of the players they've lost with the likes of Johnson, Clark, Harris, Epsom, Mason, Clark. It's some massively influential players which they've lost, and then they've also lost both their centre halves starting from last season as well. They obviously lost Harris and Burrows. They lost a massive amount of creativity and things like that, and it's going to be interesting to see when they do hit their rhythm. Obviously they have won a couple of games more recently, and they do find themselves currently sitting in 11th in the table with 2 wins, 2 losses. Lincoln City are currently in 6th with 3 wins and 1 defeat. But if we look at the previous 5 games for both teams, Peterborough United have taken 3 wins and 2 losses. Lincoln City 2 wins and 3 losses. Obviously there's cup games in there as well. Obviously Lincoln City, since the turn of the year, have been a really, really good side, and it's going to be interesting to see if Skubala can continue that form. And then obviously you look at Darren Ferguson at Peterborough. Is he going to be able to do that job that he's done previously? That's going to be a big question on the lips of the Peterborough United fans. Will he be replaced again at some point this season? That's something which I'm really interested to find out. Let me know your thoughts down below. Reading and Leyton Orient go head to head at the Select Car Leasing Stadium. Now, Leyton Orient will certainly be looking for a return to some sort of form. They've had a really, really poor start to the League One campaign. Now, despite that victory to Millwall, I don't think they've won any other game. I don't think they've picked up a point in the division yet. I think it's 4 straight defeats. It's going to be really interesting to see how Richie Wellens does in turning that around. You obviously look at Reading, who have won 3 of their last 5. Obviously, the loss to Wrexham isn't necessarily a result they would have wanted, but ultimately you're going to lose games in this division. Obviously the 2-2 draw to Colchester United in the cup as well. It's going to be interesting to see how these two teams get on, because I really like Reading. I think Charlie Savage has been in some excellent form of late. Obviously, they're still waiting for their takeover to go through, from what I'm aware. You obviously look at Leyton Orient. They were having those off-pitch discussions where Richie Wellens may have headed to Blackpool, but obviously that's been dealt with now with Steve Bruce taking up that post. I know Richie Wellens said that he wasn't sort of after the opportunity, but you never know what can happen overnight in football, especially with the start to the season Leyton Orient have had. I do think they've had some tough games, obviously less so Shrewsbury, but you look at the likes of Charlton, you look at Birmingham City, who they've faced just in the past 5 games, and it's going to be very interesting to see if they can turn this around. I do think they will be able to, but they're certainly not where I anticipated them to be at this point of the season. Steve Evans heads to the New York Stadium as he looks to take charge at home versus Burton Albion. Now, Burton Albion have obviously bought in a record, I think it's 23 players in this summer window, and it's obviously taken a while for them to figure out what they need to do. I think it's 3 draws and a defeat in the division so far this season. Obviously, bedding in 23 players is always going to be difficult, and obviously they started off the season conceding a ton of goals, but their last 2 games have been 0-0 draws. You look at Rotherham United, picked up what would be classed as a good point versus Charlton Athletic if they'd have had a better start to the season. But ultimately, with them failing to win yet again, it's going to be interesting to see how Steve Evans can turn it around. Obviously, they have picked up 2 wins in their last 5 versus Mansfield and Huddersfield. I believe the Mansfield Town was a cup fixture, but they've also lost to Fleetwood Town and Wycombe Wanderers, which obviously isn't what you want. Now, for Burton Albion, they lost that game 4-0 to Blackpool when they had, I think it was 10 men for 70 minutes of a game. So it's going to be very interesting to see when they face up against each other again how that goes. You obviously look at the Mansfield Town result. I think that is a really good result. Obviously Mansfield Town, I think, scored late in that one to equalise. The 3-1 win over Leicester's Academy, and then the 2 0-0 draws. So they've stopped conceding, but they've also stopped scoring, and that's something which the manager there at Burton Albion will have to figure out across the course of this campaign. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with these two sides. Shrewsbury Town face a tough fixture at the Crowd Meadow as they face up against the travelling party in Charlton Athletic. Now, Charlton have only picked up 1 point out of the last 4, but they've had a really, really good start to the season. And if you look at the difference in form, you've obviously got 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw for Charlton Athletic, 4 losses and just 1 victory for Shrewsbury Town, and that was versus Leyton Orient. It's going to be interesting to see how Charlton Athletic do in this one. I think they've had a really good start to the division so far, and it's going to be interesting to see what Nathan Jones can do. I think there's a real possibility that he could end up getting them promoted this season. season. I think they've got a really, really good squad there at Charlton. And I think if you look at the table, they're sitting in 5th place. 3 points off the top after 5 games. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Obviously, you look at Derby County last season, who at this point of the season were sitting like 9th, 10th, and were miles away. And obviously, you look at Shrewsbury sitting on just 3 points to start off this campaign. They're going to have to pick up some form if they want to stay in the division. Stevenage and Barnsley go head-to-head at the Lamex Stadium, and Barnsley have found some form in recent weeks. They're currently sitting 4 undefeated with 3 wins on the spin versus Sheffield United, Crawley Town and Bristol Rovers. Whereas Stevenage, on the other hand, have only won 1 in their previous 5, taking 3 defeats in that time. A 4-3 good performance versus Norwich, a 2-1 defeat to Stevenage, and a 1-0 loss to Lincoln. Their only win in that time was versus Crystal Palace, and they also took a draw versus Burton Albion. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I think Barnsley seem to have hit a rhythm, and it's going to be really interesting to see how long this rhythm can go on for. We obviously know this division it's a division of runs, and if you want to get promoted, you have to average 2 points a game. Now, if we look at Barnsley right now, 5 games, 10 points, they are bang on. Now, if they go all the way through the season, they'll end up on 92, and that's going to be very, very interesting to see how that ends up. Obviously, Stevenage, not necessarily in a bad position, but they're not in a great position. Just 4 points from 4 games. They'll be hoping for a little bit more before the end of the season. Obviously, there's a long, long way to go in this campaign. We're only sitting here in the middle of September. We've got until May. It's going to be very interesting to see where these two sides ends up. Let me know your thoughts down below. We head to the final game of round 6, in a game which I believed was on television, but it doesn't seem to be noted as that. And Birmingham City take on Wrexham, and I think this is going to be a really, really interesting one. Obviously, Birmingham with that 1-1 draw versus Walsall before the international break. Obviously, I believe that was in the EFL Trophy. It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, Birmingham City have 20-odd million pound man in Jay Stanisfield to put on the pitch versus Wrexham this time around, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Obviously, Wrexham are coming in off the back of 3 back-to-back wins and a really, really good draw, in my opinion, versus Bolton Wanderers. You look at Birmingham City coming in off the back of 3 wins, 1 loss and a draw. The 2-0 loss to Fulham, in which Stanisfield scored against him. It's going to be very interesting to see how this one goes. I think Birmingham City, obviously, by far, have probably had the biggest budget in League One ever. In the history of League One, I can probably imagine, with the money they've spent, and I can't imagine that wages are very low either. You look at the Stanisfield deal, it's a 7-year deal, I believe, for Stanisfield, and he's not going to be on a cheap deal over the course of that 7 years. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, Birmingham City have got a lot to do this season. They have to get promoted, in my opinion. If they don't go up as champions, I think it's a massive failure at Birmingham City, especially with the funds they've spent and some of the players that they've got at their disposal. Obviously, you can let me know your thoughts down below, but I'm sensing a Wrexham victory. Now, we've gone through all the League One fixtures. If you want to take a look at the previous video where we went through the fixtures from the weekend just gone and taken a look into the league table, make sure you go ahead and do that. And if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.